Hello friends, and Trubiskita. I'm Sherman Stanley. What is Trubiskita, you might ask? Trubiskita is a word that I made up. And what it means is to generate great, to make it great every day. It's a mantra that I want to live by, to empower myself, and now to empower you. I'd like to do that today by talking about a few different empowerment words: attitude, action, and choice. I'd like to share a story about a friend of mine who, when he was in high school, he dove into a pond and broke his neck. As a result, he suffered a C5 fracture, leaving him with quadriplegia, which means that he didn't have any use of his legs and minimal use of his arms and hands. The simple everyday activities became very difficult for him as he was confined to a wheelchair. When I was speaking with him one day, I asked him what he was going to do during the weekend, and he said, "Well, I have a date." I said, "That's great. Good for you." And he said, "No, Sherm, that's not great." And I'm thinking, how would this not be a great opportunity for you? He says, "Sherm, the problem is I know that it's nothing more than a pity date." Oh, well, that's kind of sad. Why? He says, "Because I know that it's never going to progress anywhere. It's to try to make me feel better, but it's also to make them feel better for helping the quadriplegic boy." I said, "Well, you never know. You need to think about your attitude in this and make a choice and take action to make it what you want it to be." And he thought, "Well, yeah, but Sherm, the problem is it's never going to be more than a pity date for me. And it's not just the date. I'm never going to ever advance to anything more than that, to become married. I'm never going to drive a car. I'm never going to get an education. And I'm never going to get a good job. I understand I will permanently be disabled, and I'm never going to get out of this chair. So what's the point?" Again, coming back to these three empowerment words of attitude, action, and choice, this was a perfect time for him to decide what he wanted to do with his life and make what he could of his obstacles and his challenges that were in front of him, just as we all have to do every day. We have to make choices. When we have hard things come against us, do they make us stronger and better, or do they make us fall into that hole of pity and self-loathing? I didn't see this young man for a number of years, and he came in to visit me. And he said, "Hey, Sherm, I need your help." "Great, how can I help you?" I said. He says, "Well, I just finished my master's degree." "Well, good for you. What did you get your master's in?" He says, "Well, I received my master's in speech pathology." "Great, well, how can I help you then?" "Well, I just got a job at a school district, and now I'm trying to figure out how am I going to access my charts without constantly having to ask for help." So we looked at different options. This was a small obstacle in his way, but one that we could problem solve together with a little bit of an attitude adjustment, taking some action, and making some choices of how to accomplish this task. What we came up with was to add some loops to each of his folders, that he was able to stick his thumbs in the loops, lift his charts out, and open them up. He's like, "This is going to change my day-to-day activities. I'm going to be able to access my charts without having to constantly ask for help." And at this point in his life, he didn't like to ask for help because he knew that he could accomplish things if he put his mind to it and took some action and accountability behind what he needed to do. So he's like, "This is great, but I also need to tell you, Sherm, not only did I get my education and a good job, but I drove myself to see you here today in my handicap accessible van." "Wow, you're driving. That must have been a real challenge for you." "Yes, it was. But I also need to tell you that this young lady that's here with me today, this isn't my caretaker. This is my wife." So I thought back to all those years before when he told me, "I'll never get anything more than a pity date." And here he was, married. When he told me, "I'll never get a good education." And yet here he was, and he had his master's degree. When he told me, "I'll never have a good job." And here he had a full-time job as a speech pathologist in a school district. And that he'd never drive a car. And yet he drove himself to see me that day in his handicap accessible van. Now, these were huge obstacles, and I'm sure it didn't come easy for him, that it took time when he was searching for a date. He probably had to weed through many different applications and talk to many different girls online before he found one that he was able to connect with and then progress in a relationship. I'm sure it wasn't easy at school when he had assignments that were difficult for him, especially with his limitations. But as he looked positive and made choices that allowed him to succeed with those classes, he eventually got to his degree. And when he first started to drive, I'm sure it was really difficult to figure out the tension on the controls to run the vehicle, to keep himself safe and those around him on the roads safe. These were all challenges and obstacles that he had to face and overcome. He had to take a little Trubiskita attitude and generate greatness and not give up and not fall into that pity. He had to work hard, just as we all do. We have to take action. We have to do things that make us challenge ourselves. And as we do that, we can generate great. We can be better, just as he was. He had many things that were huge to him. And that doesn't mean that our challenges aren't the same for us. Our challenges may not be paralysis. They may not be difficulty with driving a car. But if we generate great and have Trubiskita as our mantra, we can accomplish great things as we take action, make choices, and are accountable to them. I challenge you to live Trubiskita every day. And until we meet again, Trubiskita.